Hi everyone and welcome to Aromanosis. Thank you for buying our exclusive offer of our Ancestral Healing Kit. So this is the video part of the offer and we're here to teach you a little bit about the oils that are in your kit and how we use them for ancestral healing. So welcome.
So in this kit we've included Labdanum, Marigold and carrot seed. And we're going to show you in this video how you can use them yourself for your own ancestral healing. We're also going to talk about the tradition of ancestral healing, and there's a reason we decided to release this kit at this time of year when it's Halloween, Samhain, Day of the Dead. It's often the time around Yom Kippur, is the midpoint between the fall equinox and the winter solstice when the veil is the thinnest.
So what do we mean the veil is the thinnest? What's the veil? And what's thin about it? Well, the veil is the barrier or the separation between worlds. And in terms of ancestral healing, that's between the world of the seen and the material world that we're all alive in, and the other side of the veil, which is, we could say, it's the land of the dead, it's the land of the unseen. It's the land without bodies, physical bodies. And so this veil, which is the separation or the bridge between the two worlds, is thinner at this time of year because it's echoed by the fact that we're going into winter, we're slowing down, we're going into the darker period of the year.
So Cathy, what is ancestral healing?
Well, I often say that ancestral healing saved my life. And so what do I mean by that? Well, when we are able to connect with our ancestral lines, especially as you'll read in the ebook that we've given you with this offer, the maternal bloodline, what I deeply feel about ancestral work is that we connect with the energy that is really our life force, the energy that brought us here and sustains us. And we have been in the modern world really basically cut off from that through many different things: religion, industrialization, colonization. And so this work is about reconnecting with our deep ancestral roots, our indigenous or clan people, whose energy sustains us in this world.
And you may think, well, what does this have to do with me? But we really come at it from a very practical, hands-on, pragmatic point of view. In our own personal journeys and in working with our clients, we encounter traumatic patterns in our lives that we can't understand. It's like, well, why am I going through this? Why am I subject to all these experiences? And even when you really understand how the traumas in your life have affected your behavior, or sometimes people say, well, I don't have any traumas in my life that explain this, going to the ancestral generations really sheds light on that. And sometimes it's hard to get the details of the information, and we talk a lot about that in our Plants and Ancestors course, but many, many times there are these echoes from generation to generation. If we want to heal them in our life, we cannot end in our life. We have to extend our horizon beyond our lifetime to the ancestors. And the other thing we found is that when we do this healing, we're not just healing ourselves, we're also healing the previous generations and the future generations. So this is very practical, hands-on.
Exactly. What doesn't get integrated in the past will often find a way of coming through in future generations until somebody at some point sits up and does the work to integrate their ancestral traumas that have come through the line. And there's always one person in one generation that will actually feel that that's their job to do. It might not be the job they want, but there'll be something calling you if this really is the work for you. There's a lot about it written in our ebook, so we're going to show you some practical ways that we work with the oils that you've got in your kit to just give you an idea of the ancestral healing work. One thing though that you must remember is that it's a deep work, and so what we're going to be showing you in this video is just touching on it, just giving you a few examples.
And you know, the ancestral healing and ancestral medicine is getting more and more attention, more and more people are talking about it. And what's really important to us is, again, we want to be practical and deep, and that's where our aromatic allies are so powerful. They really transcend the intellect, they transcend the ego, and you can tell this because many of these plants before even they were turned into essential oils, have been used, in the case of Labdanum, for thousands of years since ancient of Egypt, in the case of Marigold since the Aztec times in Central America, for this very purpose. So these are allies that take us a lot further than any book knowledge or intellect can take us.
So let's begin.
So the first oil we're going to look at is Labdanum Absolute. This is from the cistus plant, which grows in the Mediterranean, and it's actually one of the oldest aromatic substances used by humans. The descriptions is that goats would wander through the labdanum bushes, and the resin, the exudate, which is the labdanum, the plant is called cistus, would embed itself in the goat hair, and then there were these primitive stills to extract it. This was already known in the earliest ancient Egyptian dynastic times. And so there is a theory that the reason the pharaohs had a fake beard in the shape of a goat's beard that was covered in labdanum was because of the goats, but it wasn't just to honor the goats. Since the first pharaohs and the god Osiris, who is the prototypical pharaoh, labdanum has been deeply linked with that. Osiris was the ruler both of the kingdom of the living and the dead, and the labdanum allowed him to go between these worlds and communicate between these worlds. And kings have attributes, pharaohs had attributes, and Osiris held two things in his hands, and one of them looks like a flail, but it's actually been shown to be an instrument called a lanisterium, which is still being used today on the island of Cyprus to collect the resin of the labdanum from the cistus plant.
The plant that labdanum comes from is called the rock rose, that's its common name, or it's Cistus ladanifera. And this is a sort of bush. It's not a tree and it's not a herbaceous plant. It's a woody bush that grows in the Mediterranean. I've seen it growing in the heat of the rocky sort of hills above Marseille in the south of France. It grows a lot in Crete, as Florian said, Cyprus. It likes the heat. And the labdanum is exuded by the leaves and runs onto the woody parts of the plant. It's got white leaves that look as if they've been crushed. So they're sort of crumpled. And some of the cistus ladaniferas there are different subspecies, that have a little purple dot at the base of each leaf. You can tell that it's from the Cistaceae family rather than the rose family, even though it's called rock rose, because of the stipules at the base of the flower on the underside of it. So there are in the Cistaceae family, you can see that there are 3 big stipules and then 3 tiny ones in between them, which differentiates it from the rose family.
Now, our labdanum is from India, and it's actually an absolute. And if you think about it, the resin, the oleoresin that the plant exudes, would be very difficult to distill. So Musa, our friend and distiller in India, has made an absolute. And people have different feelings about absolutes, but with our experience with this labdanum absolute, we know it does what we want it to do.
So, to be clear, you can buy a rock rose or a cistus essential oil, which is made from the leaves and the young branches, and that's very different from the labdanum absolute. So we actually bought some from a good friend of ours, and we thought it was going to be the same thing. And when we smelt it, we thought he'd given us the wrong thing. So even though we worked with it, and even though both have a resonance with the shadow work that we're doing in the ancestral context, we much prefer the labdanum. I was really excited to start to work with labdanum when I found it a few years ago, because I was having trouble connecting with what my body knew and my shadow knew, but I wasn't sure about in terms of my ancestral story. My mother kept us away from knowing where our roots were, and throughout my childhood I felt there was something really deeply inside me calling out to be revealed, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't even know that it came from my ancestral realms. But working with labdanum, what actually happened was I was able to connect with my great-great-grandmother, who was Indian and who had been really taken away from the family tree, not only by my family, but by the situation in India when Indian women married English men. And what actually happened was that I could feel her. Labdanum allowed me to connect with her, to really feel that part of me that was my great-great-grandmother, inside me. And the rest of the ancestral healing journey was about actually separating from her because of her traumas. I was living her traumas in my life throughout my childhood and my adulthood until I really felt her, thanks to the Labdanum, inside me. I had to feel her first and know who she was, and then I had to step back and say, okay, this is my great-great-grandmother. This isn't me. This is her story, and I have to honour her story, but I can't carry her trauma with me. And that was all thanks to Labdanum.
So I've been a psychiatrist for 20 years, and I've loved Labdanum since I first smelled it. But what really impressed me and what really changed me is what Labdanum did to me. And first, it really revealed personal shadow issues to me. But related to ancestral healing, I have to admit, I was never that interested in my ancestry. And I thought, well, I'm of German, Austrian origin. The Nazis were really into ancestral research. I found the whole subject reprehensible. And then, by working with the Labdanum, parallel processes happened. An opening happened inside of me where I realized that my lack of interest in my ancestry was actually a symptom of this whole constellation of transgenerational trauma. And as I realized that, as the Labdanum made me ready, then in the outside world, I discovered things about my grandfather during the Nazi era at a level of detail that I couldn't believe was possible. So the Labdanum really opens you up so that you're ready to receive. That was my personal experience. I couldn't have done this work 10 years ago, and I couldn't have done the historical work, the research work, if my psyche hadn't been prepared by the Labdanum.
I would like to give you a few pointers that are going to help you to really make the most out of working with Labdanum, Absolute, and the shadow aspects of ancestral work. So, first of all, the first thing to do is to get out of your own way. So what I mean by that is switch off your mind, switch off your thoughts, and breathe, become relaxed, and allow this process to begin. Once you're in a more relaxed state, then you can smell the Labdanum, and as you smell it, think of yourself as a vessel, and allow the Labdanum to fill up this beautiful vase that is you. You're sort of an empty vessel. Nothing to do, just allow yourself to be filled up by the Labdanum. Once you feel that connection's made and the Labdanum is circulating within your psyche, then what I always say to myself is let the plant lead the way. The plant has the wisdom, and this plant has been very carefully chosen for its wisdom with the shadow, the master of the shadow. So if I want to work on the shadow, I want to unearth those things, I have to allow myself to let go and let the plant lead the way. So once I'm doing that, be patient. No expectations, no visualizations, no believing something must be a certain way. You just have to allow. You don't know what's going to become unearthed from the shadow because it's the shadow. It's the things you don't know. So you have to allow. Once you're in that space of allowing and things start, it feels like sensations start to come up. And those sensations could be words, feelings, colours, movement, whatever it is. As the things get unlodged, you'll feel it. And so then all you have to do is witness. And in witnessing, it's just being aware. If a word or a feeling or a memory comes up, your job is just to collect it, catch it. So I often think of it as these tiny little bubbles, like bubbles of champagne, bubbling up from below up to the surface. And as they get to the surface, then you catch them. And if you need to, you can jot it down. When you jot it down, don't think about it because other stuff might be following that. You just need to jot it down for later. And then keep going until you feel that it's over, that piece of work has been done with the Absolute. And you'll know if really shadow and unconscious materials coming up, because it will surprise you. If stuff comes up that you already knew but you hadn't thought about for a while, that's good, that's interesting, but it's not shadow stuff. You'll know when something important comes from the shadow in terms of your ancestral work, because it'll give you that wow moment. Wow, I had never thought about that. Shit, that makes sense. Then you know you've captured something from the shadow. And just keep going. If it's difficult at first, keep going, okay? Now we're going to talk about the second oil, which is the Marigold oil. We looked for this oil for a long time before we actually found it, and I was super excited to be able to work with it. Marigold, first of all, the first thing I think is important to remember is that there are several plants called marigold. Two major ones in the herbal world. One is the marigold here, which is Tagetes erecta, but the main herbal marigold is actually calendula. So don't mix them up. They're very different plants. Here, as I said, we're using the Tagetes erecta, and there are two essential oils really readily available. This one is less readily available than the Tagetes minuta. So when you're looking to buy a marigold essential oil, you'll find that most of them, when you look at the Latin name, are the minuta. I specifically wanted the Tagetes erecta, which is sometimes called African marigold, because this is the one that was used by the Aztecs. Florian, in a minute, we'll talk about the history of the marigold. So that's the first thing to be sure of. For the ancestral work, we're using Tagetes erecta, African marigold. It's a beautiful orange flower with many petals. Actually, its name, which I can't pronounce, in Spanish, it means 20-petaled flower. So it grows, the marigold flower comes from South America, many countries in South America. It was used by the Aztecs, as I said, Florian will talk about that, but the Brazilian, it grows in Brazil, and the Portuguese who conquered Brazil took it from Brazil, took it to Europe. From there it got to Africa, where it grew really well, thus its name African marigold, and India. India originally used the calendula flower a lot in their rituals, ceremonies, for offerings, and now they're growing a lot of this marigold, the Tagetes erecta. I think probably because it grows so well, the smell is beautiful, and they're using that a lot, but it originally comes from South America.
The Aztecs have used it since time immemorial. They had a very in-depth culture of ancestral worship and death, and so Day of the Dead is a somewhat syncretic holiday. When the Spanish came with the Christian All Saints holiday and All Souls holiday at the beginning of November, they superimposed that in their colonizing on the ancient Aztec traditions. And one of the reasons that the marigold was used is because in Mexico it flowered at this time of year, and it has this beautiful golden yellow orange color and light, and the description is that the light actually shows the ancestors the way to the land of the living when the veil is thin, when they're allowed to come across, when people build altars to their ancestors on Day of the Dead. That's when the veil is thin and the marigold shows you the way. This is beautifully represented in this recent Disney movie called Coco, where there's these marigold petals everywhere, and there's a bridge of marigold petals that the dead can go and visit their living relatives through. And in addition to the beautiful yellow color, we both feel that the unique aroma of the Tagetes erecta, which is different than the aroma of the Tagetes minuta, has that same light. It's like a synesthesia, where when you smell it, that smell, you can feel the light on the inside, and that smell and light guide you. In this case, in our case, we're also using it to go the other direction from the land of the living through the veil to contact the ancestors. And I think there's something very brilliant and at the same time humbling about Tagetes' journey all over the world, really, to Africa and India. You know, the Europeans think, oh, we colonized all these places, but it's almost the Tagetes really used the humans to spread its magic. And again, the Tagetes minuta is used in the perfume industry. It's not the same aroma, so that's why the Tagetes erecta is so important.
I was super excited about this oil because I knew that it was used in South America and India for ancestral connection, as offerings for the ancestors. And so I kind of sensed there was something important there. And when I got it, instantly, when I started working on connecting with my ancestors and going on that journey that I do often along my ancestral lineage to connect with my healthy ancestors, instantly the light was there. And I think this is because it's the road well trodden. This plant has been used for so long for connecting with the ancestors. It doesn't matter which way it goes, whether the ancestors are coming this way or we're going that way. It's the same. What's important is that it's been used for so long that humanity has projected and worked with this plant for this reason, that the moment I smelt it and went on that ancestral journey, that path of light, or the bridge, as Florian said in the film Coco, opened up to me. And that's what's so beautiful about it. So now it really is one of our go-to oils for when we're working with people, showing them how they can relate to their ancestral line and work their way up it to get to the point where their healthy ancestors are waiting for them, or their clan. So it's a really beautiful oil. And I do want to say something about cultural appropriation, which is a big thing at the moment. And this, as Florian said, this oil's gone all over the world. It's used a lot, this flower, sorry, it's used a lot in India, not just in South America. It's used in Europe a lot. And so this is what the plant wants. The plant wants to be shared. The plant has a knowledge that it wants to share. As I want to share my knowledge with you, the plant wants to share its knowledge. So have absolutely no qualms about using this beautiful plant to help me and others communicate with our ancestors. So I wanted to talk about Marigold essential oil and how I use it on my altar daily. It's an oil that, as I've said, we use a lot for journeying, but I also use it as a reminder to myself and to my ancestors. In a way, the golden light we talked about that we follow when we're doing the journeying, I like it to be on my altar. So as the flowers aren't always available, we did grow some in our garden this summer, but now they're dead. I'm using the oil, and even more interesting is that the ancestors eat with their sense of smell. So I really like the idea of using oils on the altar. So what I do, just practically, is when I come to my altar, which I have actually cleaned in preparation for Semen, and it felt really good, cleaning the altar. It was a lot fuller than this, and what I did was I went through every single thing that was on the altar and I tuned into it with my ancestors and asked whether that should be on it or not. And actually 3/4 of the stuff came off, and so now it feels really clear. I'll be making food for the ancestors as well, but which I'll be sharing with them for Semen. But I'd like to just show you what I do first of all with the oil. So I just put a little bit either on my finger or I drop it directly on. I've got this really nice, it's like a soapstone or a pumice stone, more like a pumice stone, and I put it on there. I could even just drop a little drop. That's these droppers. Lovely. And so that reminds me, I know that the light that's coming off the altar will remind and show the ancestors where the altar is. And I like tending my altar every single day. It's a way of, it's a place and a way of communicating and respecting and honouring my ancestors as part of life. And, you know, it's funny, I read, when I first made my ancestral altar, I read somewhere that it will change your life. And I thought, but it actually does. And I am very aware if I neglect it for a day, I feel it. And I feel that the ancestors are reminding me that that's the place we come to, that's where we go to connect. It's our special place. And it can be anywhere in your house. I actually have it in the corner of my bedroom because I live in an earthship and we don't have an enormous amount of space, but this is perfect. I have things from nature on my altar. I would like to say, in terms of the marigold, and I mentioned this earlier about cultural appropriation, but marigolds, although they originated in South America and were used by the Aztecs and are a very big part of the Day of the Dead in Mexico, they're also huge in India. We were in India this year, and marigolds are everywhere. They're in offerings for every single ritual that Indian people have. They're used very much in cremations and burial ceremonies, and so I feel, because my maternal roots are Anglo-Indian, so that's mixed race between the English and Indian people, and I really like the fact that the essential oil of marigold that I'm using was made in India, and that the connection that I have with marigolds is actually from India. So that's another reason why it feels right for me on my altar. The things that you choose on your altar should be the things that are meaningful for you and for your ancestors. So, for example, I could share a little bit about what's on my altar. So there's the marigold that's now attracting the ancestors and bringing this beautiful smell and light to the altar. There's money from India, rupees, because traditionally money is offered to our ancestors and it helps them to survive on their journey in the other world. So there's Indian money because of, as I said, my clan are from India. I have a very ancient herbal book, and I was pleased when I was tuning in today what should stay on the altar and what shouldn't go. It stayed. It's an ancient herbal book with plants and herbs in, and it relates to the fact that our ancestors used herbs, and I'm a herbalist, so I really like that link. Things from nature, things from India, things we've made. This is a bone from one of my animal allies, which I was glad stayed. There's a magic mushroom, that's psilocybin, in the beautiful wooden bowl that my son made out of an ancient oak burr. So all these things, this is a book, and these are tiny little books that one of my students made for me. I really love them, they're handmade, but the idea of, I was really pleased when this stayed today, because the idea is, you know, in the book is the story. Held in the pages are the stories of our ancestors that resonate with us, and we need to tell those stories and we need to honour those stories. So I was really pleased that that stayed. And just lastly, this is an old little trinkety child's bracelet that I found when we went to the Kali temple in India. We went at the beginning of our journey and on the way back before we left India, and I also got from the Kali temple, right from the Kali statue in the middle of the heart of Calcutta, in the middle of the beautiful temple, this piece of material. So they really, for me, resonate with the goddess Kali, who is really our connection with the dead and with the ancestors, and teaches us that actually death isn't what we think it is in the modern world. So yeah, those things are there, and I've lit a candle, and the incense that I made out of the plants and resins that I collected. If you haven't yet made an ancestral altar for yourself, I think one of the ways to go forward with that would be to use the marigold essential oil as a point where you're going to attract the ancestors to the place that you've decided is going to be the starting point of your ancestral altar. And it'll attract them, it'll bring the light and the smell that the ancestors remember. So you could find, like I said, a nice stone, something that resonates with you that you'd like to start the altar with, and just begin with a small table, small corner, the stone and the marigold, and from there tune in with the marigold to your ancestors and ask for guidance. Ask for them to guide you. What would be the things that they would appreciate on your altar? And listen, journal, and listen, tune in, take your time, and over a few weeks you'll see that the altar starts to come to life. I mean, one of the other things you could put on straight away would be a candle. So the candle, the marigold oil, and the thing with the marigold oil, which is really nice, is that it gives you an action to do every day on the altar. So once a day you could come, I actually come usually in the morning and the evening, light the candle and put a drop of the marigold, feel it filling you up, the scent, and know that it's attracting your ancestors at this point, and then go from there. So enjoy, and as I said earlier, it will change your life.
So next we're going to talk about carrot seed. Now this carrot seed is from our French distiller, wildcrafted, but carrot originally, the wild carrot comes from the area of Iran in the Middle East and has spread all over and really differentiated itself, fitting into all these different niches. I personally haven't had a lot of experience with carrot seed yet, so I'm going to ask Cathy what her experience has been.
So, carrot seed oil. This is a new oil for us. As Florian said, it comes from our beautiful French distiller, and it's absolutely amazing. I'm quite familiar, although I've only just started working with the oil, I'm quite familiar with the plant, which its Latin name is Dorcas carota, because it grew wild where we were living in France. It's very common in Europe, although, as Florian said, it comes from the Middle East. So, Dorcas carota, the Apiaceae family, it resembles many of the plants in the Apiaceae family. One thing for wildcrafters and people who are going to be distilling it themselves is that unlike most of the plants in the Apiaceae family that we distill, such as Angelica, it doesn't have any phototoxicity. So it probably hasn't got any furocoumarines. I distilled it and made a hydrosol of it when I was in France, and really, really love the vibration of this plant, although I didn't go as deep as I've been going recently. So that's what I really want to talk about. Before I go on about how I use it, the one thing that it's called Queen Anne's lace in Europe, and that's because the flower head or the umbel in the center has this dark purple bract. It looks like a tiny weeny dark purple flower in the center of the white flowers. And so Queen Anne, who had her head cut off, I think she was King Henry VIII's one of his wives, and she didn't come up with a son for him, so she had her head cut off, and this little purple bract is supposed to be where her head had been. But it's also a good way of identifying the wild carrot. If you see this little purple flower amongst the white ones, you know it's wild carrot. Although having said that, not every single flower umbel has one of those. Okay, so enough rambling about the plant. What I really want to talk about is the oil. And I am very excited to be able to work with this oil. It's a root, even though it's the seed that's distilled, it's the root as well that is aromatic, and it's very earthy. It has an earthy tonality and resonates beautifully with the sacral and the root chakra, which is really good for this ancestral healing work. And as I went deeper into the work with the plant, what I realized was that it resonates very strongly with the feminine aspect. And that ties in well with the work with the mitochondrial DNA and the maternal bloodline. So I like to use it with the marigold together. So the marigold, as we've just said, helps us to see the golden path that leads us up the lineage towards our healthy ancestral clan. And when I couple it with the carrot resonates with that feminine sacral energy. It resonates with the mitochondrial DNA. So that little bit of DNA that is the same all the way up the line sort of sparks with life with the carrot, which also helps us to see that line. And as I went deeper into this work, what I actually saw in my own ancestral healing was I situated myself with my clan, my healthy clan, along the ancestral line. And then I could see the women that came beyond that. So the ones I could name, my great-great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother. And what the carrot seed helped me realize was that their journeys were very connected. These weren't just separate beings. They were separate beings, but they were also entirely connected to the energy of the line. And however traumatized or damaged or wounded their lives had been or had affected them, it was necessary for where I am now. And that they were all part of this healing energy that was coming from the clan as I was healing and connecting with my ancestral clan, and the energy is coming through and we are healing that energy together. All I have to do is behold. That helped me realize that the women resonating along that line were all there for a reason, and their reason had sense, and that we were all connected. So this very feminine aspect to the ancestral healing is really important. And when I say the feminine and the mitochondrial DNA and the line of women, it is the maternal bloodline. But what's important and not to forget is that it's the feminine in all of us. So men have mitochondrial DNA and they belong to their mother's bloodline, and they belong to the clan on their mother's bloodline too. So when I'm talking about the feminine and the way this resonates with the feminine, what I mean is the feminine in all of us. So I just think that's very important to remember. We're working with carrot seed oil here, and we're going to lead you through a very, very short journey using the carrot seed oil, just to give you an idea of how we use it when we're journeying. And we don't just use carrot seed oil, but this is a good example for the carrot seed, because the carrot seed works, it resonates on the lower chakras, the sacral and the root chakra, which really fits in with the ancestral work, but it has a resonance with the feminine. And so I've been using it with the maternal bloodline and the mitochondrial DNA, and helping people to connect to that line and to see it in its entirety. So I'll just lead you through. It won't be as long as the way we usually journey, but it'll give you a good idea of how you can use the carrot seed oil to journey up your maternal bloodline and connect with your ancestral clan. Okay, so we've got some carrot seed. I've put it into my drum because then I can smell it as I'm drumming. And for these journeys, you need to make sure that you've got the oil available so that you can smell it, either with, as I said, with a scent stick, or you can put a tiny weeny drop just under the nose where you can then smell it as you go through the journey. You need to be relaxed and not in a place where you're not going to be disturbed. So those are the prerequisites, and then once you're ready, then we can begin. So drop down deep inside your pelvic area, just above the pelvic bone. Feel yourself being cradled in that space, the womb space. For women, you might feel a slight tingling in your sexual organs, which means that they're alive and communication is possible. So as you settle yourself down into that very feminine part of yourself, allow the oil to fill you up. And when you're ready, bring to your mind's eye a beautiful golden rope. It's an alive rope. The golden colour is from the light, the living light that fills the thread that leads up your maternal bloodline. So take a little bit of time just bringing to your mind's eye that beautiful alive golden thread. When you're ready and you can feel it, you're going to take hold of it and make your way up that golden thread. You might notice the named ancestors, your mother or your grandmother or your great-grandmother that have passed. Just notice them. No need to stop, no need to relate, because you're going further up this line. You're discovering this maternal bloodline. And what's interesting in this work is to go further up the maternal bloodline, where your clan, the collective aspect of this line that are already healed, that are truly ancestors, that resonate with your mitochondrial DNA, and that are waiting for you. This, I believe, is where the feminine is rising from. And the carrot seed oil can really help with this resonance, the resonance of the mitochondrial DNA that leads its way, unchanged, for generations and generations, through your maternal bloodline. So just keep going up that golden thread or that golden rope of living lineage. And get familiar with it, with the feel of it. And the aim of this work is to connect, first of all, before any of the healing work can be done. You need to reconnect with your clan. Your clan are the indigenous people on your maternal bloodline that resonate with your mitochondrial DNA and with the earth. We all have them somewhere up our line. For some, they're nearer than for others, but they are all accessible. So as you go up that line, you might feel at some point, or see at some point, someone come into your view. Now be careful, because sometimes someone in the line who isn't a healthy ancestor, who isn't from your clan yet, might come in because they just want attention, or there might be a gateway person. So don't jump in and, oh, that's my healthy ancestor. Take your time. Tune in. Feel. And you'll know if they're from your healthy ancestral clan because you'll feel their love. Unconditional love. True parenting comes from our clan. The feminine is rising from our maternal bloodlines, from our clan. And this work with the carrot is really helping to decolonize our maternal bloodlines by being clear, by enabling to feel the line, to see the line, to connect with the clan, but also, as time goes on, you'll be able to see the wounded women that you can name in your line and see how their journeys also play a part in this healing. And their journeys are also the reason why you are here today, able to do this work. So, as this is just a short video, I encourage you to get familiar using the carrot seed oil with your maternal bloodline. Get familiar journeying up that living light that resonates with your mitochondrial DNA. It's an embodied energy that you'll feel. You have it in your body. It exists. And so did every single member of your maternal bloodline and your clan. This is why the maternal bloodline is the most important line to work with before you work on any of the other lines, because this is your sense of belonging. None of your other lineages share the same unchanged DNA. So I invite you just to get familiar, as I said. If you meet a healthy ancestor, then slowly get to know them. Okay, so when you're ready, either carry on this journey or come back and journey again. But this is the way that Carrot can help you to get to know your maternal bloodline.
So I have to say, for me personally, ancestral healing has been an epiphany and a profoundly transforming journey. We've, in this Ancestral Healing Kit and with the ebook and this video, we've wanted to give you some hands-on tools to really sink in. So if you want to delve deeper with these tools that you've now been exposed to, I encourage you to take our online Plants and Ancestors class.
Our Ancestral Healing online class is for anybody interested in really delving deeply into the subject of ancestral healing, either because they're a practitioner or on a personal level. You just want to know and feel that there's mileage for you in this subject. And you might have noticed that this subject is very, very popular now all over the world. And that's because it's time. We cannot just stay here as individuals separated off human beings without realizing that our ancestors are not only calling us, but are a huge part of our healing journeys and our sense of belonging. So this is a really important class.
So I hope you found this video useful along with the ebook and your new aromatic ancestral allies. I really hope you use them every day and for a long time, because they're really your allies on this lifelong journey of discovery. Along the way, based on my own experience, we may hit snags and roadblocks. And I want to mention that we do have a Facebook group about ancestral healing. We also have an email newsletter. So when you hit these roadblocks where you're like, I don't know what to do, I'm hitting limits, I feel I can't go any further, work with your allies, work with the aromas. It's amazing how they unlock you. And at the same time, reach out to us, join the community.